Hi, everybody. Matt here from Matt Likes Comics. Before I get into today's topic, I just want to make a big thanks out there to a couple of people that deserve to hear how well, how everything out there. I'd like to say thank you to Adam from Up and Adam Comics for very interesting videos and what turned out to be a pretty good interview with me on my channel. And I wanted to take a moment to thank my friend Stephen Gentner. Stephen has been a friend of the channel since day one. He has always been there when I've asked, and he has sent me presents for the AOKs that I'm very grateful for. And I just wanted to take a moment to let Stephen know how much he's appreciated. Also, his wife, Susan, she's been a fan of the channel since day one as well. And she is an absolutely gorgeously nice lady. And I wanted to let everybody know that I appreciate her as well as Stephen. Now, today's topic is based on promotional comics. Now, there have been promotional comics since the beginning of comic books. In fact, the first actual comic book was a promotional comic, and the Submariner's first appearance was in a promotional comic at the movie theaters. So, promotional comics have had a huge impact on comic books over the years, whether it's the Quick Bunny and Superman or Spider-Man and um, there was the promotional comics where Spider-Man was a victim of molestation, and then there was the promotional comics about the Batman and from Zellers. That Zellers was a Canadian company where the Joker wanted the deed to half of North America, that kind of thing. And so we had lots of things going on over the years, promotional. But the promotional comics I want to talk to today come from the early 1980s and go all the way to 1992 because they actually feature the same characters, and they're all for Radio Shack. Now, Radio Shack was an American company based out of Texas who had their Canadian headquarters in Barrie, Ontario, which is where I was born, and the corporate headquarters on the Canadian side wasn't far from where I lived for a while. And because of that connection, I've always felt a soft spot for Radio Shack. And when they were bought out by Circuit City back in the mid 90s and no longer existed in Canada, at least, I don't know if it still exists in the United States. Probably not. I haven't seen anything in a long time, but uh, I felt a little bad. Now, back in the early 80s, computers were becoming a thing, personal computers for home. And Radio Shack's entry was this thing called the TRS 80. Now, this thing had less computing power than, a watch today, but neither here nor there. It was a new sensation. I've even seen them. I had played with one or two over the years. Um, Not exactly the world's biggest thing, but it got basic word processing, etc., done, and databases and such. But it was one of those ones with the little tape machine, and you had to go the beeps if you listen to it, kind of thing. And it had one of those modems where you had to go with the phone, but that was a different thing back then. What I'm here to talk about and show is the Radio Shack comics, originally done in cooperation with DC and Superman based. They ended up moving to Archie Comics afterwards, and these books starred two kids by the name of Shanna and Alec. And Shanna and Alec were siblings, but we don't find that out until closer to the end of the series. But they're siblings who are, I guess they're probably twins if they're in the same class and everything. And they are basically, computer geniuses, and they become the stars to all these things. This is the first one that came out. This is Superman and the TSR kids fighting against Master Disaster in the computers that saved Metropolis. This one came out in July 1980, and this was the first one to come out and to feature the TSR kids, or TRS kids. I get confused because of TSR, that own Dungeons and Dragons. If I say TSR, I mean TRS. The success of that one led to another one. This one, the special guest star of Supergirl came in. And we had a situation where Supergirl was being held hostage for a little bit, but she manages to get herself out by the time Superman gets there. And she can't do it without the kids and their computer stills. Which, of course, is what happened in the first book as well. But this is book 2 of the thing. By the way, if you decide to buy these books at a place like my comic shop, please note that the information isn't always accurate. They got the books out of order. They listed that as book 3 when it's book 2, and this here is book 3. This is Superman and Wonder Woman, the computer masters of Metropolis, where Lex Luthor attacks the big World's Fair in Metropolis, and only the kids with the TSR computers can save them. These were not, of course, the only appearances of Shanna and Alec. In this issue of Superman 358, Clark Kent visits a classroom. They name Ms. Wilson, who was their teacher, but they don't particularly name the kids. However, it is obvious from the drawings that it's Alec and Shanna. And basically in this one, Clark is at the school where the power goes out, and Clark tells them a story, which is reflected on the cover, of this person trying to take over Mother Nature and call himself Father Nature. It's an alien. And basically, so that's why the kids step in, and it was basically just a background for the story. However, Radio Shack decided in the next batch that rather than continuing to pay to have these, they actually ended up paying to have the insert of the story put into some regular comics so that people could actually purchase the comics and see the insert. These 3 were available at Radio Shack. Okay? This was a regular comic. The rest, these ones were at the newsstand, and they were supplements. There was a supplement in Action Comics 509. It says right on the covers, by the way. The New Adventures of Superboy number 7. The Legion of Superheroes 265. And the House of Mystery 282. See, as is up here, it talks about the insert here. It's in a different place on each thing. 3 of the inserts are of the first one. This one is of the second one, I believe. They could all be of the first story, but I read this recently and I swear it was the second one. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. And that is the end of DC's portion of the Whiz Kids. That's what they become known as, because what had happened next is that Radio Shack decided to team up with Archie Comics, and 8 more appearances of the TRS-80 Computer Whiz Kids, or the Tandy Computer Whiz Kids, depending on the book, ended up being used. Interestingly enough, these books are not in the current Overstreet Guide. I could not find what they're called, like using the indicia, and not able to find them in the comic Overstreet Guide. If anybody else happens to see them, please let me know where they found them so that I can find them. These were about $3 a piece in Canadian dollars, about $2 American, $2.50 from my comic shop. But what they did with the Archie books, as opposed to the regular DC books, was they kind of turned these into crime mysteries rather than superhero books, because they didn't have the right standing superheroes on this. 4 of these books were written by William Palmer, who was also one of the chief executives at Radio Shack at the time, or it was but better known as the Tandy Corporation, which is where they get the Tandy computer name. So the other writers of books were Paul Klippenberg did 2. Fred Bergeron and Mike Poliski together did 1, and Mike Poliski did 2 on his own. Dick Ayers did the pencils on 4 of the books. Carmine Infantino did 1. Howard Bender did 2, and Stan Goldberg did the last one. 5 of these books were inked by Chick Stone. 1 was done by John D'Agostino, and the last 2 were done by Mike Apposito in inks. These books came out starting in 1984, and they go to 1992. And this is where I warn you. 6 of the 8 books that came in were mislabeled wrongly in terms of their order. I had to sit through and go through and read them all in order to put them in the order they were meant to be. And even still, there's a little bit, because issue 2 was a later story than issue 3, but issue 2 got issued first. Each of them builds upon the last story, so there is some continuity to these, and that's why I was able to figure out where everything goes. You've got your support staff of Ms. Wilson. It's funny how every book they start, they come back from summer vacation, yet they're still in the same grade just about and have the same teacher. It's like that whole Bart Simpson's universe thing. There's a reporter, there's a detective, Detective Shaw is the name. I don't remember the name of the reporter. I probably should have wrote it down. But we don't find out, by the way, that Alec and Shanna are siblings until issue 6 or 7. So that felt like it was a fly on the pants just to make it there, because there's no indication, certainly in the DC run, that they are siblings. And in the first few books, they don't act like siblings. However, this one, let's get to the 8 books. There were 8 total. This is number 1. In this one, they break up a bunch of drug dealers on a boat. This is issue 2, supposed to be issue 3. They break up drug dealers on a boat. There are a lot of repeat panels, by the way. This is issue 3. Should have been issue 2. Drug dealers in a submarine, and then to a boat. And in this one, Alec becomes a school champion at running. This one here, they stop a kidnapping attempt. This is book 4. And they get very Hardy Boyish, because the computers come in because, of course, The computers come in because they use them in their investigation. But what I find interesting, in just about every one of these books, they end up at some sort of computer museum, and there's a lot of panels that are reused over and over again. Although in Carmen Infantino's book, he does actually draw a few of them himself. This is number 5, where they break up drug dealers in a plane. Again, a theme. Number 6, where they break up drug dealers working out of their school, and they create a hotline to help kids that are having problems with drugs. Now, issue 7 and 8 actually have 2 stories in them. The second one is the same in both issues, and it's basically Archie learns about electronics. So Archie, the comic book company, actually started making their marks in this, and like, so that people know it's Archie. This is Tandy Whiz Kids 7. In this one, they decide to save the environment, and they stop illegal dumpers. And this one, the final one, number 8, they start a community action program because their neighborhood is starting to really fall apart. And this is the only issue of all of them where they truly act like siblings. Little bit of fighting, but mostly love of each other. And the biggest baddie in this one is a bunch of kids with graffiti. So they're they went out with a whimper, so to speak. Shanna and Alec have not made an appearance since, but I use these as an example of the power of promotional comics, because I'm never going to forget Radio Shack anyway, but now I'm really never going to forget the TRS-80 computer and things around it. Why? Because I've read all these books. Have you read them? Let me know in the comments. They're not the greatest books ever, except, the regular issues that, had regular stories in them, like, Superman 358, Action 509, etc. But they did the job because they were there to appeal to kids, and honestly, I could see why 6 to 10 or 6 to 12-year-olds might find it interesting, because it is educational. You learn a lot about computers. The problem is every single issue has the same information. So you only really need to read one to get the educational part. But the fact is, it was a lot of fun overall. And the research gave me a little bit of fits, but because I went to 4 different websites that had them listed in 4 different orders, so I read the books and put them in my own order. Although 2 and 3, I think, are still backwards, as I said, because story-wise, the one I labeled 2 makes more sense, but it's listed as 3, and vice versa. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe below. This wasn't a way to be silly or throw in another Superman. This is simply more of an example of what promotional comics can do for you. Promotional comics were big. Free Comic Book Day is nothing but a whole bunch of promotional comics. Only there's 30 or 40 available in one day a year. And if it wasn't for promotional comics, I think there'd be a lot less comic readers out there, because there's a lot of people who getting a promotional comic was their gateway to the hobby. Once again, please comment below. I want to hear what you think. Please like and subscribe. It helps with the algorithm, apparently. This is the last time you're ever going to hear me say that, by the way. The algorithm part. I'm always saying like and subscribe. Anyway, thank you very much for coming and joining some time with me today. I hope you enjoyed our little visit with Alec and Shanna. My name is Matt. I like comics, and I hope you do too. Bye, everyone.